who are currently working in industries and want to switch into consulting. Now, as tricky as it is, the trick is very simple. There is certain structures and preparation techniques that you have to follow. If you prepare right, and when I say prepare right, I'm talking about three sections of preparation. If you're going to prepare your case frameworks, you're going to have clarity in terms of basic concepts. That is one. You also have to work on your CV. And I don't mean just build a CV, I mean build a story. I mean that you have to thoroughly know your CV inside out. You have to work on behavioral questions. You have to work on how to answer. You have to work on even your introduction. So that's the second section, which also includes, of course, giving a pass to the industry knowledge, understanding the company that you're going to be interviewing for, their values, and so on and so forth. And finally, it all boils down to mock interviews. How do you conduct yourself in the mock interviews such that it is replicating the real interview scenario? And how do you bring all of this preparation together in the mock interview? And further, how do you use the insights from mock interview in the real consulting interview? So as difficult as it sounds, it's fairly simple if you're going to follow structures. First things first, who am I? Very kind introduction, like I said, Srishti, but just to give you sort of context of why you should be listening to me today and my strategies and what have I done in life, right? So when I started consulting, I was a fresher, and it's been 2.5 years since I'm consulting. Now, the thing is that I never wanted to get into consulting. I was someone who was keen into marketing. Near the second year of my MBA, when it started ending after my internship, I just realized, basis other people's experiences, basis my friends' experiences, that consulting is something that is extremely interesting. That's how I started my preparation. Now, this is to give you a context that I started from scratch, right? And so can you. The thing is that consulting is all about technique and it is about practice, but more than that, it's about how do you bring it all together. Now, I have been in consulting for 2.5 years, so it's not been long since I've been out of college, and hence I understand what the preparation mentality is. But at the same time, I've been long enough in the system to also understand this side of the table and understand what is expected out of an interviewee when there'll be consulting interviews, especially for the bigger firms, MBBs, Accenture, EY, etc. So in this session, we are going to be focusing on four major things. And just to sort of tell you all that I am more than happy to share this presentation. So you don't need to scribble things down or sort of take screenshots. I'll probably share it later. In the end, we'll also have an open forum, which is basically Q&A. And I urge you all to pen down your thoughts or anything that comes up so that you don't forget. And it's not only questions, I'd also love to learn your thoughts, right? So let's get into it. Firstly, let's talk about how to structure mock interviews in a way that they replicate your real consulting interview scenarios. First, let me start with what I did. And I am going to start with a 30-day strategy, because most of the times when you get a shortlist for a consulting interview, you don't have a lot of time. Now, when I got a shortlist, that was my day zero. After all of the CV building, after all of the preparation, after I received a shortlist for my Accenture interviews, that's when I started preparing from scratch. I did not know cases, I did not know frameworks, I did not know guesstimates. So my strategy should inspire you, because I'm sure you would be knowing much more than what I did when I started. So I have a 4-part strategy. In the first and second weeks, I started with self-preparation. What I did is I tried to get more comfortable with the cases, with the frameworks, with the sorts of questions that could be asked, my own introduction. And I would practice using casebooks, using YouTube. And now we live in the era of AI. So I would highly recommend that you use AI tools like Preparami. And there's also one, if I'm not wrong, called Case Interview AI. I've not tried it, but I'm sure there's a lot of them. So for sure, use them, try practicing with those. Then once I got a little comfortable, starting first week itself, I also started peer interviews and peer practice. Now, what I mean is that us, basically the students who usually prepare for consulting, are all sailing in the same boat. And hence, what we did is an ideal group sizing of 2 to 4 people. We'd create such study groups, and turn by turn, each one of us would play the role of an interviewer, not at the same time, but of course, in different sort of slots, probably breakfast, lunch, dinner. And that way, you can probably do 3 to 4 cases each and every day, 3 to 4 guesstimates, 3 to 4 sorts of interviews. And this is a learning experience for both. The person who is going to be taking the interview is going to learn so much from different perspectives, is going to be on the other side of the table and might understand how the interviewers think. At the same time, the interviewees are, of course, going to benefit from each other's sort of frameworks, each other's answers, how to conduct, and so on and so forth. Then, week 2 to 4 is when I moved into expert interviews also. This is when I had gotten comfortable with sort of practice on all of these aspects that we talked about. And by experts, I don't mean just professionals, or I mean, I do not have beyond careers with me. You are lucky enough, so you should leverage them. But I also mean alums. I also mean, say, just reaching out to current employees, reaching out to your seniors who are probably into consulting. Everyone's going to be more than happy to spare some 30-40 minutes to sort of take mock interviews. So that's what I did. And finally, in the last week, I sort of continued with the expert interviews, but I slowed it down. And just to give you a context, I used to do mock interviews in the range of around 4 to 5 interviews daily, especially between weeks 2 to 3. So in the final week, I again resorted to self practicing. I resorted to, again, those case books. But what changed between the first and the last week is that in the first week, I was learning. In the last week, I was applying all of the learned insights, and I did not want to overwhelm and overburden myself with a lot of interviews and external knowledge, because that's the last week when you need to build more confidence in what you already know. This is the mock interview format that I followed, and which replicates most of the interview formats in real consulting interviews. The first 10 minutes is going to be for your introduction, fit questions, and not just general fit questions like tell me about your strengths and weaknesses. These questions can come in any shape and form. For example, you're from Ahmedabad, is what you mentioned. So tell me, what do you like about Ahmedabad? There could be any questions, because these questions also help the interviewer judge your sort of structured thinking, what how do you communicate, what is your thought process, etc. Of course, the major chunk is cases and guesstimates. So 25 to 30 minutes roughly is how much time is spent in real interviews on cases and guesstimates. And finally, conclusion, feedback meaning also suggestions for the cases and guesstimates that you give. All of that also needs a structure, right? And the final reflection. And you might be inclined to think that conclusion is just that after you end your cases and guesstimates, you're just going to be like, oh, do you have any questions for me? And that's it. But that's not how real interviews usually conclude. They conclude with some conversations, and there are also concluding questions. There's a question bank for concluding sort of questions. So yeah, it's a 3-part strategy, and you have to ace all 3 of them. So this is what you should do. This is a 5-pointer summary of my winning strategy. First and foremost, use a 3-to-1 approach, of course, over and above the MECE frameworks and all of that. But this approach highly helped me learn all of the basic concepts, basic frameworks, and gain a lot of confidence. Now, for those of you who don't know what 3-to-1 approach is, it specifically means that any concept, say any framework, if you're learning for the first time, you read it thrice. Say, for example, profitability framework, I'd read it thrice, preferably in different resources, probably in I'm Ahmedabad casebook, XLRI casebook, in ISB casebooks. So I'll read these frameworks or learn about it on YouTube in 3 different ways. This will give me a perspective in 3 different ways. right? I will recall it twice. When I say recall it, I'm going to think of it, think of how these different explanations of the same concept are interconnected, and I'm going to say it out loud two times. And then finally, one time, I'm going to write it down. Now, this writing down is extremely crucial because you are going to build your own framework, your own concept. Now, you must be well aware that all of these different books, different videos have different ways of solving the same problem. So you have to build your own way. You have to be extremely comfortable with how you are thinking. And that happens when you write it down once. So that will help. Second is that for any cases or guesstimates that you solve, always write down the entire structure. Write down right from the question that is asked, from the scoping questions up to the final recommendations that you're giving using the frameworks. Write it all down. Sometimes you would be inclined to just read the cases. Never do that. If you think a case is very simple, even then spend just 5 minutes scribbling something down, because that will always help, and that will like increase the recall value during mock interviews and then later. Third is create a question bank. Now, often, like I said, that people mainly focus on cases and guesstimates. They forget to focus on the easier but deal makers and breakers of any interviews, especially consulting interviews, which are your general fit, introduction, behavioral questions. So, always, this is what I did. I created a question bank from multiple sites, multiple case books, from my real interviews, mock interviews, in each and every area, each and every aspect. And every day, since day one, I would practice 5, 6 questions and write down points for those questions. Now, these questions can be anything from, say, tell us about a time that you resolved a conflict, right? So just write down some examples, write down examples from your real life, from your CV, just pointers. And that is always going to help, again, build confidence. And then whenever certain questions are asked, you'll be able to link these answers. So use a question bank for mock interviews, and that will help. Fourth is identify all the industries and technical skills or soft skills or any concepts that you've written on your CV. Now, this is very important because whenever you step into a consulting interview, you will be expected to know everything that's on your CV. I'll give you a real example. I had interned with Disney Star. So I was expected to know media and entertainment industry. That's what my case was around, right? In the same way, I had done a lot of projects, live projects on waste management companies. I'd written a case on solid and liquid waste management. And that time I wasn't into sustainability. There wasn't a bucket in my CV called sustainability. Only when I started getting cases in my real interviews in different um, sort of rounds, that's when I realized that my CV is screaming sustainability. So I need to know all of the industries, their value chains, etc., which are on my CV. That will always help. Most of the real interviews are going to majority of the time pick up industries and concepts like say GTM, etc., from your CV. So learn them. And finally, the most important thing is maintain a master insights notebook. Now, it's going to be very helpful later. You'll be tempted to have a lot of notes. You'll be tempted to solve cases in different papers. Do that. But always maintain this master insights notebook, which has all of your frameworks using the 3 to 1 approach that we discussed. One time the frameworks written in the beginning, then this notebook has sections for BQs, sections for each and every framework. So every time you step into a mock interview, once you're done with the mock interview, you're going to spend those 5 minutes on reflecting and writing down your insights into these sections. If it's a profitability case, what did you learn from it? Did you have some different learning, a new insight that you want to remember in your final interview? And just to give you an example, this is my master insights notebook. This is 3 years old. It still comes in handy. It has all of these sections. Whenever I am supposed to prepare for anything, now I just need to read my master insights notebook and it will help. Trust me. I'm going to tell you how in the coming slides. But yeah, this is extremely important. So going to the next section, let's proceed into how to give and receive feedbacks. Now, the thing is that you have prepared well. You have done all of the preparation, all of these preparations to get into mock interviews. You've structured the mock interview. But then, how do you give and receive feedback in a way that there's going to be visible improvement? There's going to be growth, and you're going to see that growth, right? Before I move ahead, this is my peer group. This is my study group, and ever grateful to these people. Everyone is now working in different industries, and one of them is in Accenture with me, one BCG. But this was our prep group. This was our peer group, and we used to do these mock interviews in the structure that I told you on a daily basis from the shortlist up until the end. So, what I did in terms of giving and receiving feedback is very simple. When I was self practicing, like I said, writing down is very important. I'll take down the entire process, write down starting from the scoping questions up until the final suggestions, and then step by step, as and when I'm writing down, I am going to compare it with the casebook. I'm going to compare it with the video wherever I'm giving the mock interview. In the same way, when it's going to be a peer or an expert interview, I'm going to be verbally obviously solving, but at the same time, I'll write it down. And once the interview is done, I am going to go ahead and ask what could be the other ways to solve this? What are alternate approaches? How can I solve it in some other way? And most importantly, insight book. After you're done with it, you have to maintain your insights book. You have to write down whatever areas you think you need strengthening or whatever new insight you have. So here's what you should do. A simple four-step strategy. When you are giving a feedback, ensure that there's no right or wrong, right? If you are someone who's taking a mock interview, say in a peer group scenario, you might have an ideal approach basis your own scribble down framework, but share that approach. However, it doesn't make the interviewee's approach wrong. Consulting is not about the final answer. It is always about the thought process. Did you use a structure? Was there a MECE approach? And of course, you can't use a growth framework in a profitability case. But what I mean is, commonsensically, you should have a structure. That's it, right? And hence, always focus on the smaller parts. Always focus on, was the interviewee confident? Did they, like I said, follow a framework? Were the scoping questions right and on point? So that is how you should structure giving a feedback. At the same time, while giving a feedback, one of the most important rules is 80-20 rule. When you are taking an interview, you will realize more than ever that most of the final suggestions, most of the recommendations that come after cases and guesstimates are just playing between like 20% of the suggestions. Like they are going to be extrapolated to most real cases and guesstimates. There'll be frameworks, there'll be some similar patterns that you will be able to solve all cases with. And hence, these 20% are important to be noted for the 80% of cases and guesstimates that you follow. And finally, insights book. Even if you are interviewing someone and giving someone else the feedback, it's important that you remember it yourself. So maintain an insights book. Finally, most importantly, when you're receiving a feedback, ask for a step-by-step feedback. Even if the interviewer is going to tell you that everything was fine except for this one part, but spend those 10 minutes and ask for feedback right from the start. Ask if my introduction was charming enough. Ask if um, each and every part of the interview was good enough in a step by step manner. Try to track patterns from previous interviews, previous mock interviews. Are you weak in one particular area? Do you think that one particular area is very strong and you can play on it? So try to track those patterns right from your second or third mock interview. And that's how you'll be able to improve every next interview consciously on the areas you're weak at and try to show off the ones that you're strong at, right? And like I said, always be open to alternate approaches. Even if the interview is not sharing an alternate approach, ask, could there be a different way of answering a certain question? Could there be a different way of solving a particular guesstimate? So yeah, and insights book. Now, once you're sorted, you're done with your mock interviews, you have all the preparation in place. What do you do in the last 24 hours when it's just right before showtime? So, how do you ensure that the last 24 hours are going to be your make and not break all of this preparation? So, very simple do and don't list that I have basis my experience or what I followed. What you do is ensure that you are reviewing your own CV. Like I said, that you should know everything that's on your CV by heart. And I can't reiterate the importance of this. At the same time, look at your cover letter, application form, everything that you've submitted to the company, because it might be that you've sort of applied 3, 4 months ago, but they are going to look at it. And since it's personal information, you have to follow the narrative and you can't contradict your own answers. So you have to know what you've told them. You have to strongly represent that you yourself know yourself personally, right? Rehearse your introduction very well. Um, when you are appearing for an interview, always remember that the first impression is the last impression, especially for someone who doesn't know you, right? So it is very important that you give them very strong points to talk about, and your introduction can drive your entire interview. If I'm going to say something very interesting in my introduction, the interviewer is going to pick up on it, especially in consulting interviews or cases, and the rest of the interview might be around something that I said in my introduction. So ensure that you are giving them some 3, 4 talking points that they can pick up on, and then the ball is in your court. Also, look at the company's introduction, their values, how do you resonate with their values? And yeah, all of that is something that you have to be prepared with. Again, rewrite all of the frameworks once, and I'm not saying that beautify and write them in detail. I'm saying that just scribble them down from memory, and that'll give you a lot of confidence. And all of this is going to be just like an hour, 2 hour sort of task. This is where now finally your insights book comes into play. You are not going to be overwhelmed by all the notes from mock interviews. You're just going to look at your insights notebook. You're going to look at each and every part in the book that you have yourself written, and you will be able to recognize that from which particular mock interview did I get this insight. And that is subconsciously going to increase the recall value of all of these frameworks, all of this information that you have in your final interview, which is the next day, right? So this is where it comes into play. You just need basically 3, 4 hours to sort all of this, and then sleep well, eat healthy. And I'm not saying all of this in a very, you should sleep and eat healthy way, because I was always the student who would pull all nighters right before quizzes and exams and assignments, and would comfortably go into the classroom at 8 in the morning without sleep, do well in exams and presentations. But all of that one side, consulting interviews one side. And I say this because in the consulting interview, you will have to be extremely proactive. You will need to be calm. You will need to be extempore. And hence, that's where sleeping over all of this preparation comes into play. So you have to do that. What you do not have to do is don't learn any new cases or frameworks. A big no is no mock interviews on the last day. You're not going to discuss with the other fellow applicants whether or not they are, how prepared they are, or if they are doing something which you are not doing. That shouldn't happen. Even, I mean, I'd say that restrict conversations with also seniors and employees in terms of asking them what to do, what not to do, because then you're going to dwell on what you haven't prepared, which you shouldn't. You have to just be confident on what you have prepared. And the insights book psychologically will help you do that, because you would be like, oh, I have so many insights, like I've done great preparation. You'll go prepared, right? So don't overanalyze what you've not done, because by then you will be well prepared if you followed this structure. And finally, the last section is what are the last minute common mistakes which even hurt, say, often strong candidates. I've seen my very close friends make these mistakes for no reason, because they are just common mistakes and they couldn't crack the interviews. So I've very simply listed down these mistakes and very easy fixes for you. If you follow these fixes, you will be more likely to avoid these mistakes subconsciously than not. First is, like I said, don't take too many notes. It'll always overwhelm you. This we've spoken about. So virtual or physical, maintain like your master book of everything you need to know on the final day, like the final 24 hours. Second, never overcomplicate cases and guesstimates, right? It's very simple. When you talk about profitability, it is going to be revenue and cost. Of course, it can have nuances. Revenue can further be, say, volume into average pricing, or it can be broken down by number of people who are buying into the number of times they are buying, and so on and so forth. But don't complicate it unnecessarily. Have a very simple structure and framework, and that will help you have organized thoughts, right? So have a structure, have a simple framework, and then build on it while you are in the interview. Don't lose track of what is important. The same goes for guesstimates. And if you're overcomplicating it, it's going to waste your time. Also, an easy fix is that whenever you are in an interview, ask the interviewer, do you want me to solve the entire thing? Do you think that you'll need the numbers? Do you want me to just focus on, say, cost, or both cost and revenue? You're going to save your time. You're going to save your bandwidth. And most of the times, the interviewer is going to tell you that, okay, no, let's not get into this, because they have very limited time. They are consultants in the end, and out of their schedules, they're taking these interviews, right? So they're not going to have a lot of interest most of the time in full math or you giving them like one concrete number. So try to ask it. And if they say no, good for you. Again, no lot of scoping questions. Now, this is because when you ask a lot of questions to the interviewer, they're going to think that you don't know, right? You are unsure, and hence you're asking a lot. So this goes back to simple framework. Ask limited scoping questions that you need to know, objective about the company, geography, and just basic things. And then trust your framework and start building on it. Ask questions as and when needed, but only the necessary ones. Do not smile. You have to smile in your interviews. Be extremely confident, because that's what it boils down to. When you prepare, you're going to prepare like you don't know anything. But when you are in the interview, you are going to appear in the interview as if they are at loss if they're not hiring you. And trust me, this is going to differentiate you from the other applicants. Be extremely confident, be prepared. And finally, don't talk too less, because that will, of course, show that you probably don't know. Don't talk a lot, because that will also show that you don't know. You might just be blabbering. So don't do that. Structure your thoughts. It's okay to ask for time. It's okay to ask them for a minute, 30 seconds to sort of structure your thoughts, but do that before you are answering. And treat the entire interview, right from your mock interviews, as a discussion. And that's how you'll be very comfortable in your consulting interview, as if it's just some other discussion with your peer group or some experts. So, on that note of talking too much, I conclude over here, and I hope this was of some value to you all. Like I said, that before I open the forum for questions and thoughts, like I said, that I had a question bank and I took this trip down memory lane when I was preparing this deck for addressing all of you. And that's when I realized that I would want to share this question bank with all of you. Along with these questions, I've also sort of created my own feedback frameworks, which you should use for mock interviews while receiving or giving feedback. So there's these frameworks that I've created, and this is a document that I've put together. I'll be very happy to share it with you all. All you have to do is just keep an eye on my LinkedIn right after this call. I'm tempted to post it, and of course, Mahavir will get in touch, and I'll be happy to share it with you separately for other candidates as well. Recently, I've also started my Instagram channel. So if you're someone who's interested in sustainability or consulting, feel free to explore. And with that, I welcome any and every questions that you have.
Yeah, great presentation, Ara, and it was really lovely that you have put in so much effort to make the presentation and make the whole session such a like engaging and such a like you have covered everything. So we still have some questions. So I will request everyone
I'll
to
stop
please.
sharing so that I can see everyone, or at least the questions. As of now, I can just see my screen.
Yeah, yeah, sure. So let's start with Vyom. You can unmute and ask your questions.
Hi, Ara. It was really a very insightful session. I loved it. I had this question that you had discussed something about the 80-20 rule and the MESI rule. Could you please elucidate on that one because I couldn't understand
Of
in that
course.
section of deck.
Of course. So let me start with MISI, which is a very basic framework that you are supposed to follow while structuring any and every answer in your consulting interviews. MISI means mutually exclusive and collectively exhaustive. This means that, especially when you are solving cases and guesstimates, your approach has to show such a structured thinking that you have thought of each and every part, say probably the entire value chain. You've thought of everything that could go into structuring the answer, but at the same time you have exhausted everything. You have compartmentalized, but you have exhausted all of the options. Does that make sense?
Yep, that does. And what about the 80-20 rule?
So the 80-20 rule always says, as the rule is, that 20% of phenomenon or 20% of learnings can be applied to 80% of problems. 80% of the things can be solved using 20% of the concepts that you know. And this always comes in handy in terms of, say, when you are preparing for your behavioral questions, when you write down, some 3 4 events from your past, they can be replicated to most of the behavioral questions. If you're going to be asked about a time you've resolved a conflict, or you're going to be asked about, say, time that you depicted teamwork, so there'll be these 3 4 examples, which is just 20% of what you've done, but that will be replicated to 80% of the questions there are. In the same way, the same applies for cases and guesstimates. You will have some specific recommendations and suggestions which you can repurpose to most of the problems, most of the cases, most of the guesstimates.
All right. Just a last one.
Of course.
Maybe this one is a different question, but okay. Answer this if you were a BBA student, you were a BBA student from Ahmedabad University, right? So if you had to pursue consulting as a BBA or a business major, like would you have taken the same strategy? Because XLRI does comes with some opportunities or maybe some tokens in hand.
Absolutely. And like I said, hence I started with the introduction wherein I said that I was a fresher. So, of course, when you pursue an MBA, especially from a good reputed university, that increases the likelihood and chances because you have a specific placement committee working for it. You have placement duration, wherein you know that in this duration, you have to prepare for this 1 month. You get a shortlist or not is, again, that's where preparation starts, right? But if I were to say that if I had started it in AU, yes, 80% of my strategy would be the same, because this is regardless of XLR, right? This is how you are supposed to be when you are preparing for consulting. So it remains the same across. There'll be certain nuances, like for me as a fresher, as against the work experienced candidates who always have a bigger, higher sort of edge in consulting, because consulting is in the end about industrial knowledge and all of that. So I had to put in more effort in terms of building my CV, and hence I again and again talked about the importance of knowing your CV, building a narrative and not just writing points. You have to have a strong story to tell. You have to have strong achievements that you've depicted, and you have to believe in it, right? So that all of that will be even more for someone who's just done their bachelor's or is just a business major and hasn't pursued their MBA. But the overall strategy, the outlining structure that we talked about remains the same for preparation,
All right. Thank you very much.
of course.
Yeah, Dinesh, please go ahead with your question.
Yeah, okay. Hello. Hello, Ara. Like, the session was like really amazing. I learned a lot of tips and tricks. So, thank you for that. My question was I have given a few of the consulting interviews before, and they do also ask about the mathematical questions and the quizzes a bit. So like how should we prepare for that? Because like actually I guess you haven't talked about it in the PPT. So should we actually prepare for that, like giving our most of the time, and through what all like ways we should be preparing for that?
Hi, Dinesh. So I get your question and I did address that. So I was talking about cases and guesstimates all of this time. So when you talk about such mathematical questions, when you talk about questions that need some solving numbers, that's called guesstimates, wherein you would be, and that happens for most of the consulting interviews. You're going to be
No,
asked a case.
sorry. Like actually, they also ask about some of the quizzes and the puzzles. So it is like apart from the high guesstimates, which
Right.
I want to ask. Yeah.
Right. So you're talking about reasoning, logic and reasoning, logical reasoning sort of questions. Is that
Yeah.
correct? Am I
Yeah.
getting
Yeah.
that right? Yeah. So they do that in a lot of interviews, and hence your again frameworks and all of that come in handy over there also. You don't need to additionally prepare for something else if you are following all of this. If you are doing your cases and guesstimates right, logical reasoning questions are going to be easy to solve, because the trick is that even in these questions, even if there is math and logic involved, you are supposed to give them a structure and framework. You are supposed to, and no, I don't mean that write it down like a case, solve it. You are supposed to tell them that, okay, I think that probably, and just break down your mental structure, write something down. And then even if you will not be able to reach to the final answer, if it's a math problem, if you're not able to reach to the final answer, they'll at least be happy that you know what you're talking about, right? So just give them logic, and that is common sense. So that is going to be built better in terms of answering with structures and frameworks. And hence, it's very important that you just work on conceptual clarity. So there's no separate section that I prepared for. Even I got such questions, but it was easy to answer them if I looked at them in terms of your other introductory and logical reasoning sort of questions.
Okay, got it. Got it. Thank you.
Of course.
Yeah, Puneet, please go ahead with your question.
Yes, sir. Good evening, ma'am. Ma'am, I have a question
Please,
related to
please,
CGPA.
Priyanka.
That
Hi, Puneet.
I, yeah, ma'am, I have a question related to CGPA. That is it necessary or a must condition to have a very good CGPA or to be a topper or to have a CGPA like 9.5 plus? And how many CGPA one should have to get a big four, or it really matters most, even if you have a good command on cases and guesstimates?
Right. Very commonly asked, very interesting question. As tempted I'd be to say that no, it doesn't. It absolutely does. Your marks and CGPA is one of the first and foremost things that is looked at for shortlisting. And this more so applies to freshers or applies to people with similar profiles, like a general male engineering profile is, say, more available than, say, art students and so on and so forth. So most of the times for consulting firms, they, especially MBBs, Accenture, Big Four, so they do give a lot of preference on how were you academically, because that helps them understand if you are going to be able to study new industries, if you're going to be able to learn new things. So it makes a lot of sense in terms of shortlisting. But yeah, once you are shortlisted and once you get interviews, it doesn't matter. Then there's not going to be questions around that. Then it's all cases and guesstimates. So it's a two-part thing. To get that shortlist, it is going to matter. And I'm not saying that if you aren't an above average student, you're not going to get shortlists. You have to play on different aspects on your CV. You have to play, you meaning anyone, has to play on different aspects of CV to just show that you have strong consulting skills, you have strong work experience. Uh, but once you get the shortlist, again, that's not important. Now, then what's important is all of these things that we discussed.
And ma'am, how many one should have
How many what? So usually it's a profile
CGPA?
that's preferred is 999 or 88819, but like 80% and above is usually preferred, is what I've seen.
Okay, ma'am. Got it. Thank you, ma'am.
Sure.
Yeah, Gaurav, please go ahead with your question.
Hi, good evening. I
Hi.
have around close to 3 years in sustainability itself. I have worked with many consulting firms like SG Analytics. I've worked with Crystal.
Glad to
So,
know. Wow.
so my point is like I have stability concerns in my CV, so I'm not getting interview calls. So, what would be your suggestion in that case? Like
Yeah, that, yeah, sorry, please go ahead.
I have worked with around more than 5 companies in my 3 years of tenure.
Yeah, that's a very common recurring problem that most of the people who've been in a particular industry face, because consulting is in the end about cross industry work. Whenever you apply to any company, you're not applying to one industry or working with one industry in that company. You are applying to just be a consultant across industries. And hence, this is something that most of the consulting firms try to sort of not immediately hire, if unless they have an opportunity. Say for example, if you're talking about sustainability, if there is a consulting firm which is head fast focused on sustainability, which works in sustainability or has a department which has openings, then they'll be prone to hire people with that industry background. But this happens 20% of the times. 70% of the times you have to, even if you have only one domain knowledge, and this is not only sustainability, anyone coming from any other industries, say someone who has strong experience in automobiles, you can't just talk about your work experience in terms of that experience. You have to break it down, bucket it into consulting experience. So how do you do that? Even if you have sustainability experience, even if say if you work with CRISIL, you write down your points in a bucket called growth strategy, called peer benchmarking, called ranking and reviewing. So you have to break it down in consulting words rather than making it look like it's just sustainability, and then double down, and then inside the buckets your CV points could be on sustainability, but the way you package it has to be different, so that they know that even if this person has been headfast working in one industry, in say sustainability, the person knows what consulting requires, and has done all of these things which will be required in our other projects. So yeah, that's how probably you should apply and try reworking on wording on your CV.
So you mean to like I should write measurable impacts or numbers in my work experience under the bullet points in my CV?
Not really. So, I mean, I can't comment on one particular CV because I don't know your experience and I don't know how your CV is. But no, I'm not talking about numbers. I'm talking about the clubbing, bucketing. So, say for
Okay.
example, if you are going to package an experience, if you have some points at CRISIL and you're going to write
Hmm,
them as say worked with a sustainability ranking industry or something like that, instead
hmm,
of
hmm.
that, you package it as I have worked in peer benchmarking, I have done competitive ranking, I know how to sort of basically do tech vendor assessment. So that is how these are the terminologies you used as your headings to bucket all of these points, instead of just saying that okay, I've worked with a lot of companies in sustainability.
Okay. And I had question like in today's time, which is the trending or booming area, ESG advisory services or ESG rating or ESG consulting? What would you say according to your experience?
That's a very interesting question. If I were to say, like basing this answer in India, it doesn't matter, because regardless, all of these are parallelly struggling, and at the same time, all of these are booming. But sadly, I hope that this changes in the near future. Mainly, the work in all of these areas differs when you talk about North America or when you talk about Europe, because they have higher importance laid on sustainability and differentiating, say, aspects of sustainability. Mostly for India, for Indian firms, for say Indian companies, all of that is the same. So hence companies have to multitask, they have to do all of this. So yeah, that's how I answer that.
Okay. Thank you.
Of course.
Great. Ishita, please go ahead with your question.
Hi, Ara.
Hmm.
Uh, so actually, my first question is related to your 3-1 framework. So you mentioned like we have to reiterate 3 times. Second, I got confused. So what do you mean like we have to interconnect for the second step?
Yeah. So 3 to 1 in simple senses, 3 times read it, 2 times speak it out loud, and 1 time write it down. So 3 times you have to read a particular concept or framework, probably, like, preferably in different resources, in different books or different videos. So 3 times you try to study it, you try to learn it. 2 times you try to recall whatever you've studied. So all these things that you have, the information that you've grasped by reading or watching something, 2 times you will say it out loud. Okay, that this, say for example, this is the profitability framework. You break down profit into revenue and cost and so on and so forth. So you speak it out loud 2 times, and then 1 time you write it down so that it connects all of that together. So that's basically connecting all of the information that you have and creating your own structure, your own framework.
Okay, you mean to say like we have to like go through the each step so that we can relate it better and then we could write it in our own way. Yeah, that you mean.
Absolutely, and that will help you generate organic recall value. Then it won't feel like an effort to remember a framework. Then it'll organically, whenever you're asked a case, you'll be able to recall it basis this.
Okay. My second question is that in like apart from consulting, we see aptitude test we used to have for the screening. So does that also play an important role in the consulting? Do we have the aptitude?
um So this differs from companies to companies. Some of them do after, as soon as you are done with your application. Some companies do have a screening process. They have aptitude tests, and I wouldn't term it as aptitude tests. More or less, they are just, they could be questions ranging from, again, logical reasoning to anything that they want to ask about general fit of the candidate. But most of the times consulting interviews also, so it's a 50-50 split, it depends on the company. But most of the times I've also seen companies not do that. They just directly have your application, they have your CV, and you start with your rounds for interviews. So this mainly happens in industries, this happens in uh, strategy roles, in marketing roles, where aptitude is given more importance in terms of an assignment or in terms of, say, quiz.
Okay. Okay. And my last question is related to my profile. So I had a 3-year career back, but presently I'm working in a consulting firm. It's a startup basically. So will that affect my resume or selection process for a big firm?
Again, it's a very specific, candidate specific question that I might not be the right person to answer for two reasons: because I don't know your history or profile, and at the same time I don't know the companies that you, the roles that you would apply to and what they are looking for. But if I were to say from, say, a generic standpoint, no, any and every work experience, diverse backgrounds, everything is welcome, as long as you know how to package it well, and as long as you get that interview, you prepare in this structure, and if you show that you can take up on any industry, any project, that's it.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
Sure.
Yeah. Yeah, Harsh, please go ahead with your question.
Sure. Thank you so much for sharing valuable insights. And my first question is like, if someone does not know the exact answer or the uh, like the so exact answers, so how should they respond to the interview like that? Like if they don't know the exact answer during the interview, so how can we defend ourselves? Like if like we know the
Yeah.
the basics of that instead of the exact answer, like if in the technical part.
Okay, so just a caveat that in consulting, like I said, in my presentation, there is no right or wrong answer. So whatever you know is better than not knowing anything, because it's just going to talk about your thought process and how you think about things. And that's the beauty of consulting interviews, that as tricky as it is, in terms of say marketing interviews, you will go and you will be expected to know certain specific frameworks. There is right and wrong, there is a certain way of answering certain things. But in consulting, it's all abstract. You have to just know basic principles. And like you said, first thing is, if you're not very sure completely, probably reiterate the question once and be like, okay, if I'm getting your question correctly, is this what you're asking, is this what you mean? If they say yes, go ahead, tell them your thought process, tell them that okay, I'm not absolutely sure with what you're looking for as an answer, but basis my understanding, so on and so forth. In the same way, you can always ask for 30 seconds, a minute to structure your thoughts. Be like, I need, just a minute to gather my thoughts, and can I just take 30 seconds? Think about it. Think about anything. If you know basic concepts, basics of anything, just think about it and just answer. Tell them that okay, you're a logically sound person. You might not know the technicalities, like you said, but you can get there. That's just learning when you're logically aware. Yeah, the key is confidence.
Okay, sure. Thank you.
Yeah, Ishan, please go ahead with your question.
Okay, hi Ara, such an incredible session. Huh?
Hi.
I'm in my UG right now, and this question was regarding your experience. I am in my fourth semester. Fifth semester, our placements start. So I am really confused whether I want to go into consulting, because I've done internships in consulting. I've started my own consulting club, and then I've done internship in finance also. So what was it for you that made you think, now let's shift from marketing to consulting?
That's a great question. Very interesting, because I'll tell you that most of the people who start consulting are people who are confused about what to do, what career to pursue. Because consulting gives you an opportunity to work with multiple companies. You don't have to stick with one company or one brand. You're working with multiple companies, because different projects, they are time based projects with different companies from different industries. So then I'm not going to be restricted with working, say, only with FMCG, or working, say, only with automobiles. So that's how usually people picture consulting. And this is apart from the money and travel that people idealize. But usually this is the reason why people get into consulting, which was my reason too. So how I shifted from marketing is that once my internship with Disney Star was done, and I loved it, it was amazing. But the internship under media and entertainment was again under sports ad sales. So I was working with the sports department. And that's when, post my internship, when my friends talked about their internship experiences with these consulting firms, I sort of understood that all of them had different experiences. They had worked with, say, liquor companies, they had worked with automobile companies. So just different companies on different projects, done strategy work and work that would excite me. So I thought that I don't want to constrain myself this early in terms of my career. I would want to have avenues open while I'm exploring and building an expertise, while I select a domain, right? So yeah, that's how.
Okay, that was such a great answer and really insightful. Just one more question. So even Accenture is on the campus, Hannah. So I wanted to ask, is there something Accenture specific to say that I should keep in mind while interviewing for them?
Not really, because like I said, that could be any team, any person who's taking your interview. And again, the boon or bane of consulting, there is no right concept or answer. The interviewer might just be looking for something absolutely different. There's a lot of interviews that I know of जिसमें cases or frameworks नहीं पूछते, just because they don't want to ask, and they're heavily only on safety cues and all of that. So you have to be completely prepared. And the beauty is that all of these companies also follow this structure, follow this. So as different as they can be, as abstract as they can be, they are also going to be very similar. If you just know the basics and know कि mock interview का ये structuring है, तो बाकी you will be able to put.
Okay, thank you so much. That was such a great answer, such a great session again.
Glad.
Okay, so Adarsh, please feel free
Uh,
to ask.
Hi, Ara. I'm Adarsh, currently pursuing an MBA at UPS and aspiring to build a career in consulting. First of all, thank you so much for doing this and sharing your knowledge. So, my question to you is when firms talk about industry knowledge, what specific aspects of an industry are they actually looking for? Additionally, is it better to choose one industry and go deep into that, or should one first build a broad understanding across multiple industries?
Okay, so to answer your first question, MISI is not supposed to be industry specific. MISI is supposed to be whatever question you are asked, it's supposed to be framework specific.
uh, I
So,
didn't ask about MISI actually.
okay, sorry, I got it wrong then.
So I
What
mean,
was your
when
first question then?
basically when firms talk about industry knowledge, right?
Okay, industry knowledge, just
Industry knowledge, what specific aspects of an industry are they actually looking for?
right. So you don't need to be a master of any industry. So the best way to put consulting in words is master of none, jack of all. That's what consultants are. You just have to, when I say industry knowledge, you just have to know the industries on your CV, because that explains that whatever projects you've done, whatever work you've done so far, you at least know about it. The best way to gain that basic knowledge in less time is understand their value chain. The general value chain concept is going to remain the same for all कि ठीक है, you start from research and designing and end up to say customer reviews, customer satisfaction, after sales services, but it differs for each and every industry in terms of nuances. Waste management companies not probably going to have the same as media and entertainment, so they'll have very different structures in terms of how the value chain operates. So if you know the value chain, if you're going to be asked any question about that industry, you're going to ace it because you know कि basic functioning क्या है ये industry का. So that's how you should know that industry. You don't need to know data and facts and all of that. You just need to have basic conceptual clarity and of course general commonsensical understanding of ठीक है, where does this industry thrive, which probably how is that industry in especially where you're living at in India. What does that industry look like? For example, sports, especially non-cricket sports in India, is a difficult industry. Cricket sports is easy. So I should know all of these basics. So that. And your second question was?
It was the same only. So basically, you're saying value chain of like 6, 7 different industries. That's enough to.
Yeah, I mean, you can't put a number to it. Any industry that you think is probably either currently trending or probably you have it on your CV or in the past work experience. It's good to know. And apart from that, even if you don't know, like I said, the common value chain remains the same. Even if you'll know for these 4 or 5 industries, you can repurpose that knowledge commonsensically to other industries as well.
Surely. Sure. Thank you so much.
Sure.
Yeah, before coming to you, let's have Ria's question because you already asked. Yeah. Ri- Yeah, Ria, you can unmute and ask your question.
Okay, hi Ara, Ria
Hi.
this side. Like I have worked with Accenture for 2 years in software industry, and
Okay.
like currently I'm pursuing MBA and I'm in second year, and I'm now looking for a career switch in consultant role. So just I just wanted to know that like what role should I look for, and if I wish to join Accenture again, how should I proceed on that also, and what role specifically I should look in IT industry to go in consulting field.
Role in IT to get into consulting, then sure, Accenture will be the right place for you for 2 reasons. Because you already have work experience at Accenture, and then you're going to come back after an MBA. And Accenture, so all of these consulting firms, there's very as similar as they have stark differences. Say for example, if you're going to go to Accenture with a consulting project, I mean if a client, they're going to go from the POV of tech transformation. There is going to be some innovation tech edge most of the times. Similarly, McKinsey, Bain, BCG, all of them have different types of projects that they majorly sort of take in, right? So in that terms, if you are very interested in tech, that makes sense. But again, I am someone who doesn't have a tech background, and I don't work on say tech consulting projects. I work with people who are tech consulting implement, like they work on implementation, they're business development people. So I have an understanding of that, but you will be able to easily figure that out on portal. There's all of these you have to apply for the general consultant or analyst roles. I think consultant for you because you have prior work experience, but you apply for those roles and your CV is going to be vetted by the HR, and the HR basis whatever your experience is, say IT or whatever, they are going to put you in the right domain. So it then depends on the interviewer who is interviewing you, the department that interviews you,
Okay, yeah, I got it. Sure. Thank you.
of course.
Yeah, you have time, right? We can take more
Let's
questions.
just take last two questions, please.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, Athava, go ahead with your question.
Hello, Ara, Atharv this side. Uh, I just wanted to ask about the field which you are in. Like you are in sustainability. So I am currently preparing for product management role. So I was interested into sustainability. So I just wanted to know that the carbon credit market and the AQI with these topics are trending right now. And also there is a huge untapped market in this field, since the small and medium businesses are not tracked on the carbon they are emitting. So like the huge companies and startups which are there already in the market, they are all tracked for carbon emission and they have to bring in carbon neutrality. If we take an example of Infosys, it has achieved carbon neutrality. So like what can be the problem statement, like what can be the problem which we can solve and give a value proposition to the government and the people around, catering to SMBs, since you are from consulting, so you might be dealing into these kind of topics as well. So just wanted to know a few things about that. And it will be better if we can have a conversation later on, huge conversation like for 15-10 minutes if you have free time on it. Because
Sure, we
I'm
can always connect back on it. But great question. Again, something that I'd already said. It all boils down to there is a huge untapped market for sure, but there's difference between trends and topics that are trending, but actual demand, right? And in India, sadly, sustainability is going to be a huge untapped market for some time, even when there's so many firms coming up, because the plain simple reason is that we do not have regulations in place that even force industries. And when you talk about these bigger firms like say Infosys, they're not complying to laws and regulations because India has some specific policies and regulations in terms of sustainability. It's because Europe does, and in order to do business in EU, there's a lot of regulations that you have to comply with, and hence you often see that the bigger firms are complying with this and not small and medium businesses, because they have restricted geographies and they are not compelled to do so. They are not dealing with external businesses, and hence I think this is a sort of far-fetched conversation. And of course, like you said, it's a long conversation to have, because there's no one solution or one thing you can do and give a proposition to the government. They are trying, but everything as of now is voluntary. It's majority is voluntarily that the companies are doing or doing because of regulations in other countries or geographies. But yeah, India has to catch up on sustainability a lot, but it's again multiple factors come into play why it can't happen and it isn't happening.
okay, okay, got it. So yeah, if, it would be better if we can connect later on for a like long discussion on it. But yeah, thank you for the answer. Like yeah,
Yeah, everyone.
definitely.
Yeah, yeah. Please feel free to connect with Ara on LinkedIn. We have already exceeded our time because it's already 10 minutes away from our scheduled time. So I have one question I have for you. So there is like in the past sessions there were a lot of speakers coming from other companies. So they some of them mentioned that we should practice in a group of three. That one should be interviewee and one should be the interviewer and one should be the moderator. So what's your comment on this?
I mean, I personally did not practice in that way, and hence an ideal grouping, like I said, 2 to 4. So of course, 3 is an ideal number, but I
Okay.
would highly recommend that there's only one interviewer and the remaining people are interviewees, right? So there's going to be only one person who's going to control the entire narrative and flow for the interview, because everyone who's a peer, who's preparing together, are sailing in the same boat. In the end, all of them are preparing for that one interview. So you can't have someone who's moderating. They're moderating on what basis? They're moderating what? It's not a group discussion, is what I feel. So a consulting interview has to go line by line. Say, for example, if I am the interviewer and there's 2 other people who we have like a study group and they're preparing with me, I give the problem statement. One person takes the lead. One person say is the interviewee and says ki theek hai, reiterates the problem statement, asks a couple of scoping questions. During that time period, the other person, the other interviewee, can take down notes, can ensure ki whatever I have in mind is being asked, and then can chip in as a team if something's been missed out. So you are preparing individually also, but you are also as a group sort of replying. So that gives you a lot of confidence कि तुम्हारे साथ कोई और है, instead of just being on the spot कि mock interview में तुम अकेले हो, अब क्या बोलना है. It gives you confidence कि ठीक है, कोई और भी कुछ जवाब दे रहा है, मैं भी थोड़ा आधा जवाब दे रही हूँ. And at the same time, the interviewer is also learning a lot. I would be learning कि ठीक है, this is a scoping question that I wouldn't have thought of. This is a good question. Let me write that down. At the same time, you too have probably missed out on this question. You should have asked this. But I'm not going to tell you till you reach that section in the interview because I'm the interviewer. So these roles help. And hence I said that on a daily basis, do those 2, 3 questions wherein each person gets to be 2, 3 mocks, wherein each person gets to be the interviewer. Because there's only 2 roles in the final interview, right? Either you are on the interviewee side, and to be a good say interviewee, you have to know how an interviewer operates, what goes in their psychology, what could be their reasoning for asking certain questions or cases. So yeah, I believe that these 2 roles help.
Yeah, okay. That perfectly answers my question. And thank you, Ara, for joining us and giving your time, effort, energy. And the presentation was wonderful, Ara. To be
My
honest.
pleasure, absolutely, and thank you for having me. I'd love to keep helping out, and if there's anything else, please feel free to reach out. Of course, post this, let's connect, and I will also be very happy to then share these materials offline with you so you can use them later.
Yeah, sure. Share the link with me and I will transfer to all the audience as well.
Great.
Okay, Ara, thank you. Take care. Have a great day. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you.